Respected Sir, it is an honor to extend heartfelt welcome of our chief guest, Honorable External Affairs Minister, Dr. S. Jaishankar ji, on this auspicious day. Without taking much of time, we would like to play our video performances. Our first performance is the best known classical dance, Kathak. The name Kathak is derived from Katha, originating from Uttar Pradesh. This dance form traces its origins to the nomadic people of ancient northern India called the Kathak, which means storyteller. Ms. Palak Bhansali and Puspita Uttuma performing semi-classical Kathak, and they will be celebrating love of Radha and Krishna. I may now call them on the stage, please.
की धुन सुन राधिके मुरली की धुन सुन राधिके मुरली की धुन सुन राधिके तुमसे तुमको पाना तन मन तुम तन से मन को जाना उलझन गुम जिया रे नैना चुप के हरे मन गुम सुन डोरी टूटे बांधी नैनों ने जो संग तेरे देखे मैंने तो सब रंग तेरे ही के ना हो छूटे ना ये रंग मन में की वतन देखेगा मुरे
Thank you, Plug and Pushpita. Pushpita is an Indonesian, and both are the JNSEC students, former students. I would like to invite Shri Bashir Ahmed CDA sir for his welcome remarks, please.
Good evening, Namaskar, Selamat Malam. Honorable Minister, Sir, Minister of External Affairs, Dr. S. Jaishankar, Sir, Secretary East, Shri Shaurav Kumar, Sir, Additional Secretary, Shri Ravi Shankar, Sir, Ambassador of India to ASEAN, Shri Jayant Khobragade, Sir, Joint Secretary, Mrs. Geetika Srivastav, Joint Secretary, EMO, Shri J.P. Singh, Sir, Under Secretary EMO Sri Atul J. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. I welcome you all to tonight's community reception held in the honor of our visiting Honorable External Affairs Minister, Dr. S. Jaishankar. May I request you to give a big round of applause to the Honorable Minister. Sir, I would like to personally thank you for being with us tonight. Despite your very, very busy and tiring schedule, we feel privileged and honored by your presence. Let me inform you that you have a very huge fan following in Indonesia among the Indian diaspora. We have been regularly witnessing your speeches and interactions online on the social media. And so, on a lighter note, I feel that you owe us this visit for the number of hours that we have spent watching you online. So, about the Indian diaspora, I mentioned that they are huge, diverse, and vibrant. In fact, through their honesty and hard work, they have been adding to the prestige and honor of India abroad. So with these words, may I allow me to invite you to the floor. For my distinguished guests, I would like to mention also that Honorable Minister's speech would be followed by very brief, very small, pointed question and answer sessions. Sir, the floor is yours, sir.
Namaskar, good evening to all my brothers and sisters from the Indian community, well-wishers of India, to my colleagues from the Ministry of External Affairs, from the embassies here. Let me say it's really a very great pleasure to be with all of you today. And I must compliment Bashir, because he not only can get me to do something, but actually convince me that I owe it to him to do it. So this shows a diplomatic talent which will serve him very well in the years to come. But I think many of you would know that right now in Jakarta, there are a very important set of meetings which are taking place of the ASEAN, of the dial partners of ASEAN, and in the course of the next 3 days, many foreign ministers will be here. And in fact, my day already started. I arrived this morning. I met 6 foreign ministers so far, including my Indonesian counterpart, Minister Retno Marsudi. We will, of course, all be meeting President Widodo as well tomorrow, or day after tomorrow. But you know that no program abroad is complete without a meeting with the Indian community. So for me, this is really always an energy charging experience. It's always good to see people. It's always good to see our fellow countrymen and women who go out in the world, who have made their own lives, but also shaped the image of our country abroad, and who have individually and collectively actually helped to build a relationship. We are the official custodians of this relationship. You are the real owners of this relationship. And I would say without your contribution, your hard work, your effort out here, our ties, not just with Indonesia, this is generally true all over the world, but definitely in the case of Indonesia, given how strong our ties are, I think I would begin really by recognizing your achievement and by complimenting you. Now, when it comes to India and Indonesia, there are a lot of things that we share in common, not just the alphabet I with which our country names begin, or even the location, the fact that we are close to each other, or even that we are large countries with enormous diversity. But the fact is that we were two societies who struggled for freedom around the same time, where in each society there was a lot of sympathy and support for the other one. We got our independence around the same time. We were engaged in nation building in very similar circumstances. So when we look at each other, India and Indonesia, I think there is a very natural feeling, attachment that we have for each other. And this emotional connect, I would say, in many ways, is a very big resource for this relationship to draw upon. Now, we would have started, of course, our modern relationship in the 1940s, but I think all of you again are very familiar that our ties actually go back hundreds, if not 1,000+ years. And there are so many traditions, there are so many archaeological sites, there are so many cultural practices that we share, which really show what a strong bonding we have built over the years. And of course, the most famous example of that is that in the state of Orissa, even now they celebrate what is called the Bali Yatra, where there is a historical tradition of people setting out to Bali. But I want to fast forward this and speak really of our times. And our times, in a way, started about 30 years ago. 30 years ago, when India started its reforms. And we started our reforms naturally at home, but a lot of the inspiration of that came from our relationships abroad. And by 1991, we had realized that the growth model we were following was not delivering the results which people thought it would. And when we looked abroad, we turned particularly towards the ASEAN, and within the ASEAN, Indonesia as the biggest country, as the largest economy, as the, in a way, the strongest cultural influence, these countries of the ASEAN were actually our partners in the changes which the last 30 years have seen. So when we think of today's India, an India of high growth rate, and India today which is trading more, which is investing more, where Indians, talented Indians can go out in the world like all of you, where there are people who have settled down in other countries or who have found employment or domicile in other countries. Many of you actually are the beneficiaries of these 30 years of change. And this change, what has happened at home in India and what happened abroad, particularly in relationship to ASEAN, These are two sides of the same coin. So when we think of Indonesia, for us, this is the growth period of our modern era. These are the relationships which have actually served us very, very well. And so if there is one event, where India is always there, that we go out of our way to reaffirm our bonds year after year, month after month, it is that with ASEAN. And that is why today I am here for these meetings. And my presence here in many ways is a statement about the importance that we attach to ASEAN. Now, we began our I would say, reform era with this relationship with ASEAN. But it has grown over these 30 years. And it has grown in many ways. It has grown beyond ASEAN. So if you look today at the relationships we have with Australia or with Japan and Korea, these were actually, the pathway for this was actually the ASEAN. So if today we speak of the Indo-Pacific, Indo-Pacific is when the Indian Ocean and the Pacific Ocean have come together, and we see ourselves today as not restricted to a limited area, that this is an India, 5th largest economy in the world, most populous country in the world, today reaching out very much more. Indo-Pacific happened because India's ASEAN relationship happened, because a country like Indonesia played such an important part, and that is something which all of you should recognize and appreciate. Now, India's story today, if I were to describe to you the changes, perhaps the most important part of it is that we live in a globalized era. That the changes which are happening in India should not be seen in a vacuum, that these are part of the changes. Obviously, there are many unique aspects to what is happening in India, but a large part of it is what is happening across the world. And the results of it are there today even in our relationship with Indonesia. In the last few years, Indonesia actually has emerged as our largest trade partner in ASEAN. Today our trade is close to $40 billion. There are a very large number of companies, you know this better than I do. When I actually read the list of companies who are either doing projects here or offering services here, who have a presence here, it actually reads like a who is who of Indian business. But I also know that there are very reputed companies in Indonesia, companies which have been set up by Indian entrepreneurs here, who have also been global, who have also done projects in India, who have invested in India, who have done it globally. So what the Indian community and what I would say the businesses here have achieved, that today is a very large part of that relationship. And I'm told that there are almost close today to 5,000 projects of different kinds which are associated with Indian or Indian origin businesses. And that's a very, very impressive number out there. But having said that, I also know that when a community lives abroad, because today as a community you are in sizable numbers. I think the persons of Indian origin would probably be about 120,000. Maybe those still holding Indian passports would be about 10,000 plus. Now, we have to see how is this bond maintained. Because what is special about India is over many, many generations, there are Indians who have gone abroad. I just came from Zanzibar. There are 5th generation Indians there. In Guyana, there would be 6th generation Indians. And it will be there. You could find something like that in Fiji or in Mauritius. But today, because we are living in a globalized world, and also because the workplace has become global, how do we encourage this? How do we nurture this? This is a very important part of how foreign policy is conducted. And I know that one of the challenges for all of you for many years has been that of connectivity. And I fully understand that. I have lived a very large part of my own life abroad. And I know what a difference it is to have a direct flight and how difficult it is to make one or two changes. How important it is to have your own carrier, and how other carriers, however good they are culturally different. So what I see today as a notable step is the fact that there are the initiatives now to establish direct connectivity between Indonesia and India. And I can assure you that as a foreign ministry, we will encourage other carriers also to look at this market. You know that today in India, the aviation business is changing rapidly. You would have read many planes. We are ordering the largest number of planes today in the aviation business. So when they start thinking of where to deploy those planes, I assure you we will give them very good advice that at least some of those planes should find more points, more routes, greater frequency to come here. The other change, and this is something which is a direct responsibility of the government, is in regard to visas. And here too, we went through a period of turbulence. Some of it was coming out of the COVID period. COVID, of course, created problems in many, many ways. But the fact that today the e-visa system is operational and it is there to stay, I think it would make life very much easier for those who don't hold Indian passports to go in and out of India. Again, I looked at the numbers of the people of Indian origin. I also checked the number of OCI holders. And I would urge many of you who have not contemplated taking OCI, that it's actually, you will find it a very, very convenient way of keeping up a link with India, of actually traveling to India. It is really something which will be very much to your benefit. So let me take the opportunity to give you that message as well, that, do look at OCI. It will take you some initial trouble at the start to fill up all the forms, but I assure you that process today is very, very easy. Now, having said that, I know that Indians everywhere, when they are abroad, want to know what's happening at home. And I would try to give you a very objective picture of the situation today. I'm giving you a very objective picture because I perhaps travel more than most people. I have an opportunity to compare what is happening in India, not only with how things were before, but also with what is happening in other countries who are often in a very similar situation. So, what is today the state of the world and where does India fit in? I think none of you would disagree that the big problem, the big situation that we are all still coming out of is the COVID situation. That COVID may have gone away. It has not fully gone away. There are still parts of the world where there is COVID. So do keep that also in mind. But COVID has stayed and will stay with us in different ways. A lot of it for many of us is personal. That, we know somebody or somebody in our family, friend, social circle, workplace, who we lost during COVID. So some of it is emotional. A lot of it is how it has disrupted our lives. It has disrupted our lives in terms of those of us who had COVID. I myself had it quite a few times. We don't know what is the health impact, but that's fine. I'm not here to give you a medical lesson. But it has disrupted the economy. It has disrupted society. It has made us, in many ways, concerned about how do we plan for such a situation, how do we cope with the after effects of this. And many societies have come out of it better, many societies have not. And I would say this to you as not just as a minister of the government, but as someone who was part of a small group of ministers whose responsibility it was to deal with COVID, that when COVID first hit the world, when we all knew about it and realized, okay, this is something which is going to be a very big issue, the general assumption in the beginning of 2020 is if there is one country in the world which is going to take a severe hit because of COVID, it is India. Now, there were very good reasons for this assumption. In fact, I have myself sat in meetings which, along with the Prime Minister, which we had on global briefings which were done. And always at the end of the meeting, they would then point the map to India and say, that's really where the big problem is going to be. Now, we had our big challenge. But finally, we were able to deal with it by not only setting up establishments to deal with, here was a country, I can tell you the first few weeks and months, we were looking in the world for masks, for PPEs, for ventilators. Many of them, I had never seen a ventilator before in my life. Which one of you had heard of PPE before COVID? Maybe some doctor did. So we started actually by saying, okay, we don't have production of any of this. Let us go around the world, see what we can get. We couldn't get very much because everybody was also doing the same. We started making it. And then we realized what we were capable of. That within a matter of months, a country which was looking out for all these things in global markets had started exporting it. A year later, we had the vaccine challenge. And when the vaccine challenge happened, again, we were one of the most successful producers of vaccines. It was not just a made in India vaccine, there was also an invented in India vaccine. And if you look at the efficiency of production, we were right up there in terms of quality of vaccine production. And that efficiency allowed us to contribute. There was a big international initiative there called COVAX. So a large part of the COVAX supplies actually came out of India. But in addition, there were a lot of countries small countries, many of them, poor countries, many of them who had no chance of getting vaccines. They were last in the queue for the vaccines. And we felt for them because once upon a time we were also last in the queue. Now, this time around, because we had the willpower, the vision, the leadership, the effort to make a difference. But we felt, okay, not everybody else has the same today benefit. So, when we look around the world, there are approximately 200 countries in the world, 197, I think. Out of 200 countries in the world, almost 100 countries, 99 to be exact, actually got their vaccines from India. And many of them got their vaccines actually without, as a gift from us, because we knew that they were in a financially difficult position. So even where Indonesia is concerned, it was very interesting. There were things which we sourced from Indonesia. There were, medicines and vaccines that we provided to Indonesia. So when we speak, about time-tested ties, we have this friendship, we have this solidarity. Let me tell you, COVID was a time when the true, true character or the real personality of countries actually was shown up. And I would say this where India and Indonesia was concerned, that there were times when I needed something, and I called up Retno Marsudi, and I must tell you the Indonesians actually delivered, and vice versa. It was in medicines as well, because at that time there were many medicines in short supply which were needed. So the first point I want to tell you is that not all countries in the world have recovered from COVID. But among the countries who have recovered fast, who have recovered strong, who come out with a better health structure. Because I don't know how many of you go regularly to India, but I guarantee to each one of you, because I travel a lot within India, if you go back to the town where you came from, and the smaller the town, the bigger the difference. Please go and visit the health system of your town, wherever it is. And I guarantee you, you will see the difference. You will see whether it is the primary health center, whether it is the taluk hospital, whether it is the secondary, tertiary hospital of the district. You will see the difference, the enormous upgrade which has happened in this period. So we took what was a, you could say, जो कहते हैं ना आपदा को अवसर बनाते. So you took a disaster and actually made it into an opportunity. The second part of it is the economy. Because again, a lot of people, in order to recover from the COVID, to recover from the economic downturn, they actually, even rich societies, threw money at the problem. Whereas what we did, Prime Minister was very far-seeing in this regard, that he took the view that the best way of dealing with COVID was actually to do reforms during this period, to support the informal sector, to support the small businessmen, the small producers, to clean up the banking sector, to make sure that when we came out of COVID, you actually had the vulnerable sections were protected, the smaller businesses were ready to go, the bigger businesses were competitive, that financing was available. And the result is a very interesting thing which you should see. If you look at the last 2 years, the last 2 years are the 2 years we've come out of COVID. These are the last 2 years of our highest ever export performance. So you have countries who are still struggling with COVID, and you actually have today an India which has not only, in a sense, dealt with the challenge, but come out with the challenge in a way doing many of the changes which today make us more competitive and productive. Now, one other big change which happened during COVID, and this is global, but it was very intense in India. It is how much more digital we became. That India is already a very, one of the most intense, fast-moving digital societies in the world. I mean, our per capita data consumption, I think, is among the highest. It is among the cheapest and the highest in the world. But during this COVID, actually, we discovered the power of digital. Now, some of you, I think Bashir mentioned that, you see me talking about this in various reels. So one of the stories I tell, and this is a true story, which is actually going to the US and showing, this was a period when people were looking at they're asking you for, in New York restaurants, for your COVID vaccination certificate. So my son actually pulled out from his wallet a piece of paper which he got in America. He lives in America. I showed them my COVID certificate on a phone. And at that time when I did, I must tell you, it was a novelty. My phone was being passed around because everybody looked at it and said, "Acha, oh, take a look. In India they do this." So the CoWIN platform, because again, there were many countries which had vaccines. Not everybody was able to vaccinate with the vaccines. How do you organize the people if you have a country of 100 million? How do you get people at the right place, at the right time, on the right date? This requires an enormous organizational effort. Many of you are in business. You know how hard it is. Now, we were able to do that because using the CoWIN platform, actually all of us knew we were in this category. This is where your first shot was due. This is where you have to go. These are the dates when you are eligible to go. And when your second shot was due, you were again told that. So our rate of vaccination was actually very fast, very high. So it wasn't just the production of vaccination. Now, this also showed up in other areas. Now, some of it has actually created businesses of their own kind. You know, people took to remote education. Many people didn't want to go to hospital at that time. So they were not comfortable before by doing distance consultancy. They became much more comfortable with it during this period. But the real change is actually in governance. Today, if you go to India, I can tell you we are one of the most digitally governed societies in the world. And what do I mean by that? The government today, since this is a practice started during COVID, we provide 80 crore people, that is 800 million people, 60% of India's population. They get food. Some were already getting food. They got additional food. Many were not getting food, so they were getting their rice or wheat or pulses from the government during COVID, and that scheme has been continued thereafter. It's called Pradhan Mantri Garib Kalyan Anna Yojana. Now, we are able today to give food support to 800 million people because there is a digital backbone on which this is done. So during COVID, many of you would have seen, during COVID, the press had a field day, okay? Because the atmosphere was very scary, so anybody could write more scary stuff. So you would have, press predicting this is going to happen in India, that is going to happen, there's going to be chaos, there'll be violence. Why was India socially stable? Why was it that despite the lockdown, despite the fact that people went home, a large part of it was through the entire COVID period and thereafter, including right now, today, about 800 million people get food from the government, and about 450 million people get money paid into the bank accounts, and this is disproportionately women, because their bank accounts are linked to their Aadhaar card, they're linked to their telephone. Government today is able to look after people without the money being lost on the way. And that is an example of digital governance. But now you will say, okay, that happened during COVID. So I will tell you what is happening after COVID. We have today big programs across both in cities and in the countryside to fund houses that the people of a lower income strata who are deemed eligible for house ownership, the government provides them money for home ownership. And home ownership, because nothing creates more dignity and self-respect to a family than to own a home. The moment a family owns a home, their own sense of themselves changes. Now, in the last few years, we have built and handed over 35 million homes. 35 million homes. And 35 million homes means, if you roughly multiply by 5, which is the size of an average Indian family, it's actually 4.8. You are talking today of 160 million people. 160 million people is more than the population of Japan, who today have homes which they did not have before 2014. And this program is continued. The same thing I can tell you for water. We have, again, those of you who would have left India many years ago would have memories, particularly if you were not in a big city, that water connection is a problem. Electricity connection is a problem. That there are in the countryside, in rural India today, there are 197 million households. 124 million households have been connected to water. Now, it isn't just that we connected it. Today, the system can tell you If you ask somebody, okay, tell me the names of this 124 million people, where do they live, who these people are, we know who these beneficiaries are. We know today if we are giving a housing benefit, a water benefit, an electricity benefit, it is going to the people who deserve to get it. That is the difference today in governance. And I would add one more thing. In all of this, I mean, if I'm presenting to you a picture where in the last 9 years, if 800 million people are getting food, 450 million people are getting money in their bank account, 150 million people have got houses, roof over their head. About 450 million people have got new water connections. A larger number have got electricity connections. 100 million people have got their firewood replaced by gas cylinder. That about today, 1/3 of the country is actually covered by the health system and by the pension system. So this is today the India I'm projecting to you. And this is an India where all these benefits are given. And there is no controversy which state you gave it to, which language you gave it to, which religion you gave it to, which caste you gave it to. To me, when people speak about good governance, when people even speak about secularism, to me a government which does not differentiate when it comes to the benefits of its policies, that is the real test of what we are about. So, I want, therefore, those of you who work or live abroad or who study abroad, today to really get that sense of what is changing in India. It's big things and little things. I mean, in our own, foreign ministry, we are, or I would take even the embassy, many of you would have had an experience with the embassy. If today you want to renew your passport, or if you've lost, God forbid, you lost your passport, or you go for any consular service, please note how much faster it is. But please also understand why it is so. It is so today, because in the old days, I mean, I've been doing this for a long time. If somebody lost their passport, it would take 1 week, 2 weeks, sometimes a month. Because they'll say, okay, I have to go write a letter, I have to go check with the regional the office which issued you your passport. Today, you have to check with the database. There's a public service culture change. That if the biggest revolution in terms of public service delivery is actually in passports. And these are not, when you start thinking you want to rule better, govern better, deliver better, it's not rocket science. 9 years ago, I'll give you an example. 9 years ago, if you are a citizen of India, anywhere in India, across India, you had less than 100 places where you could go to apply for a passport. Okay? So there are 750 districts of India. There were less than 100 places in 750 districts where you could go and apply for a passport. Today, there are almost 600. Okay? Now, how did it change? You must understand this. It changed by a very, very simple thing. Prime Minister felt, okay, passport service is not good, do something about it. Find a solution. Find a solution creatively. And the creative solution which we found was that there were post offices all across the country, and today people are not writing letters. So the post offices are there, the employees are there, the work is less, so use them for passport. So all we did was today create a new thing called Post Office Passport Seva Kendra. And immediately, you could see actually the difference it does. And once the mindset starts becoming positive, that, those today, if you want what is called Tatkal service, if you produce your list of basic documents, your Aadhaar card, your PAN card, your driving license, you can actually get a passport within a matter of literally 2 or 3 days. So I'm citing that to you, for in the totality of things, it may not look big. But if you take the delivery mentality, the service mentality, the idea, many of you would have heard this term, making it easier to do business. Okay? I mean, we are I think the country with the maximum number of rules and regulations on how to make life difficult for people. Hundreds of years have gone into this. Now, last 9 years, we reversed the clock. And we went, there was a World Bank ranking. I think my memory serves me right, we went up about 63 places, I think, in the ease of doing business. But there is another concept which Prime Minister Modi promotes. He calls ease of living. How do you make life more comfortable to the average Indian citizen? How do you relieve, how do they stop thinking, government means burden on my head? How do they start thinking government is actually a solution to my problems? That how do you make the government itself change its behavior towards the citizen? And I can assure you, as someone in the government, it's very hard to do this. Now, those are the changes today. That if it could be a railway service, it could be, what you may encounter I gave you the example of passport, it could be your tax filing. All these today are changing. But the other big change is actually the physical change. That the rate of infrastructure growth today, about everywhere you go across India today, you will find, bridges being built, road is being built, airport is being changed, train line is coming, new Vande Bharat, new solar panel, solar generated electricity plant. So this sense of change, and the final change which at least today I would like to flag to you is actually the change of the young people, the change in the aspiration. The fact that, you look, a country of 1.4 billion people has enormous talent. It's always had talent. The challenge has been how to bring out the talent. How do you turn talent into technology, or talent into wealth, or talent into achievement? And I'll be very honest with you. One of the things which we all say, and you will be saying it among yourself also, when Indians go out, they are successful. Right? You say that, no? Huh? Right? Why do you say that? Because you went to some environment, that environment gave you opportunities and possibilities, and the talent was there in you, and you used it. So our challenge today is, how do we get more and more Indians to be successful at home? And especially young people, how do we get their talent into innovation, into creativity of some kind, into technology? And I will just leave one, a broad statistic with you. If you look broadly at the number of educational institutions, I'm now talking medical colleges, engineering colleges, technical colleges. Broadly speaking, there'll be some variation here. The number of institutions which were there in the first 60 years of our independence have actually doubled in the last decade. And if you go today to especially to a institution where young people work or study, I assure you, you want to see a new India, a changing India, that is the place to see. That when young people below 25, sometimes below 20, come up to you, when they are talking to, I've been to places where I've got really like lectures on drone technology, that people have shown me patents that, they have got in their early 20s. That people have spoken, you go, the number of startups today, we are among the fastest growing startup cultures in the world. And that is actually where our future is. So what I want to tell you, because I spent some time describing to you what is happening at home, and I did that for this reason. Today, we have completed 75 years of our independence. You have today a government of India, a Prime Minister of India, who is not thinking in terms of a year or a term or a decade. He is thinking of an era, what he calls Amrit Kal, the next 25 years. All that I am describing to you inside the country and outside the country. That today, if the Prime Minister goes to Papua New Guinea, or tomorrow he is engaging the Caribbean, if you see him in Norway, or you see him in South Africa, these are today the foundations of an India that will be global. What I described to you are the foundations of an India that will be developed and that will be modern. And that is really the journey towards which we are heading. We are all part of the journey. Those of you who live outside India, in different ways contribute to it, in resources, in experience, through your own sharing of different kinds. So I want you really to understand the optimism in the country today, the feeling today that yes, there are challenges, that we are capable today of meeting it, that this is an India that will go forward. And that sense, most of all, I can tell you, that I see in all the international meetings that I come to. That when you see the kind of respect that India gets today, that Prime Minister personally commands today, and a good example of that was the recent visit to the United States. That, there have been visits before, but if things have changed, it's also because we have changed. We have changed for the better. The world has expectations of us, and that is certainly something which we are very committed to meet. Once again, really, I thank you today for taking the time out, for coming here, for listening so patiently to me, for giving me this opportunity really to share these thoughts with you, because I feel, I genuinely believe, and I say this as a person who first went abroad in an era where we were really cut off from home. I mean, if you went out in the 1970s, at best, there's no internet, telephone was too expensive. You are lucky somewhere to read a paper maybe once in 10 days. So I know why it is important for people abroad to stay connected with India. And I hope in some way my remarks have helped you to do so. So thank you again. I stay? Yeah, okay. Please. So, please do sit down, and if any of you have any questions or advice or comment, I assure you I'm open to all of them. So let me start by recognizing this gentleman. Okay, that gentleman there, the mic went there first. Okay.
Good evening, sir. Myself Manojit Das, coming from Surabaya. I am just asking one question to you. We all know India digitally improved by a lot, I think highest in the world. So when can the NRI can give their vote in the Indian embassy and abroad?
I've noted that. No, I've got a pen. I need some paper. Can I take 2-3 questions so that I can really cover everybody?
Thank you, sir.
So NRI voting, I've noted that question.
So thank you, sir, for spending time with us, means taking out time for us out of your busy schedule. I would like to share you my experience at which speed the Modi government is working. In 21, when COVID situation was there, JEE, Joint Entrance Exam Center, was not in Indonesia. My daughter was in 12th, and I was afraid in the nearby country Singapore is having many restrictions. So I applied in the Namo app in January 22 for giving a center of JEE in Indonesia. And with an unbelievable speed, within 48 hours, I got a mail, and joint secretary level person was appointed to solve this issue. And within 1.5 months, Indonesia has been declared as the 13th JEE center, exam center. So it is really a beautiful gift from Modi government to all these children of Indian diaspora in Indonesia, and we are really proud of you, sir. Thank you.
Okay, I'll take one more.
One request, sir, like the SAARC countries and Gulf countries have special quota in the JEE. If you can consider for Indonesia, means children of Indian diaspora as a special quota like SAARC and Gulf countries, sir.
Hello, I'm here. Yeah, thank you. So I'm the founder of the Indonesia Economic Forum, which has a lot of non-Indian members here. And you are widely considered to be an authoritative voice of the developing world. So I wanted to ask you, because we see you a lot on social media, what motivates you to take on causes, not just for India, but for the whole developing world? Personal motivation. Thank you.
Okay. Let me first start with the NRI question. Look, I'll be honest with you. This is something which has been debated now for almost 25, 30 years. Okay. There are many arguments in favor of it. There are many arguments which caution you in this regard. I think the arguments in favor, all of you know. The arguments on caution, a lot of it has to do naturally with, NRI's origin, our own neighbors. There are a whole set of issues out there. At this moment, the most honest answer I can give you is that I see it raised in Parliament. It continues to be an issue. It is an issue in discussion. Actually, even I think the Election Commission has held discussions and debates on it. So at the moment, the compromise struck is the overseas citizen, the OCI card, which I pointed out to all of you. So whether it will move beyond that, I would find it hard to predict at this time. But I can certainly tell you this, in every meeting I've had with any Indian community abroad, this one question 100% comes. So I have no doubt about what is the sentiment of the Indian community in that regard. Regarding the JEE center, look, we also had to do exams. I think my memory is we had to set up a center in Kuwait, because you had situations where people from country A could not travel to country B, and we tried to respond to those situations. But that was one part of a larger effort we were making. If during that period, you may not know it in those words. There was something called the Vande Bharat mission. Vande Bharat mission was that Indians and people of Indian origin who wanted to come to India during COVID, when scheduled airlines were not flying, when COVID restrictions were applying, how do we get them back? We were one of the few countries, I must tell you, who did it on such a big scale that if you looked at, we had a situation, there are roughly about 1 million students at any given time, of Indian nationality, and let us say many more who would have held other passports. Many students, the hostels closed, they were told go home. Okay? They had no home in those countries. There were people who were in merchant shipping, people who were in cruise line, airlines cruise. Sometimes an airline took you to some place, London, and said, thank you very much, now please find your way. We had tourists, because at any given time, if you actually think about it, if you see the number of Indians because when the shutdown happened, it happened for many people without their being prepared for it. As a result of this, we actually, through running flights, people coming on ships, those in the neighboring countries coming by land transport. We actually facilitated 7 million people coming back. So, and the same thing, if you looked at vaccines, again, people, COVID, you think of vaccines. I don't know, any of you lived in India at that time. We had, during the Delta variant, a big oxygen problem. Now, we actually went around the world getting oxygen and then organizing the oxygen to come to India. It came by plane, it came by ship, and then we had to get it, distributed to different places. So this example you gave of an exam center, look, at the end of the day, what is the change which Prime Minister Modi is trying to bring about? He wants the government, he wants the average person working in the government to put themselves in the shoe of the person before them. That if I come to government and say, look, whatever, please renew this, please give me that, if the person deciding can think in terms of what does it feel to be the person asking, I assure you there'll be a better government. And that is actually the change. That when we speak today of a people-centric government, that is actually the transformation that we are trying to bring about. I have noted the quota point. I will have to go back and talk to my colleague Dharmender Pradhanji on that. What does it take? Why do I push the developing countries? Look, somewhere, I think, particularly for people, I would say from a country like India, and I'm sure this applies in Indonesia also, we have been treated unjustly. We know what it is to be discriminated against. We know how unfair life can be. And again, COVID was a very good example. There were countries, important countries, big countries, who had 8 times the vaccine of the population of the country. And next to them was a country to whom they did not give 1 dose. Okay. So, I think the more you deal with the world, that sense of injustice, you could say, it troubles you, And say last year, part of the debates that many of you would have followed was exactly this, that there were rich countries, countries which had secured their own future, who were asking poorer countries to make sacrifices, which on a cause which was directly related to the richer countries. And, I think that was very manifestly unjust. So, I would say today, part of it is where you come from, what experience you've had, part of it is the responsibility you have, part of it is also the vision of your country and of your leadership. See, I give you a logical answer. If in India, I feel it's my moral responsibility that people should get food, which is why I told you about the program, that people in need of resources should get at least some basic money, that roads should be built, that health access should be given. How can I say my inclusive society will work in India, but when I cross my border, after that my moral compass is shut down? Either I have a moral compass or I don't have a moral compass. So I would say today when we say, Prime Minister speaks saying inclusive India. Inclusive India, if you're a genuine believer in inclusive India, also means inclusive world. That same heart must bleed the same for the person, in Africa or Latin America or in Asia as well.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much. Ladies and gentlemen, please give a big round of applause to the Honorable Minister. So thank you so much. It was a very, very engaging discussion. I would like to thank you for your presence and for making our evening delightful and interactive. Ladies and gentlemen, may I request you to give a big round of applause to our Honorable Minister and the entire delegation. Distinguished guests, I would also